Do you think you motivate people? This is where most leaders misdiagnose the problem. Let me show you a situation you have probably seen. A manager increases the team bonus, and for a few months, performance improves. People work harder, the numbers go up, and then the bonus disappears, and the behavior disappears with it. The moment the reward stops, the performance drops. This pattern appears in companies everywhere, and it reveals something important about motivation. This is why motivation is often misunderstood. If you believe you motivate people, you may be operating under one of the most persistent myths in management. Motivation is an inner drive to perform or repeat an action. Three words matter in that definition: inner, drive, and action. Inner means the energy comes from inside the person. Drive means there is psychological force behind the behavior. Action means the behavior becomes visible in the real world. Now, notice something important. Enjoyment is not part of this definition. You can be strongly motivated to do something you do not enjoy, if it connects your present reality with a future you want. And the opposite is also true. You can enjoy many things and still never pursue them, just because they do not move your life in the direction you want. Enjoyment is not the engine. Drive is. If motivation is an inner drive, one implication follows. There is no such thing as external motivation. There are internal motives and there are external stimuli. Bonuses, deadlines, threats, incentives. These things do not create motivation. They influence behavior. You remove the reward, remove the threat, and the behavior often disappears, because the internal drive was never activated. That is compliance. That's not motivation. Research on self-determination theory shows this pattern clearly. When behavior is controlled by external pressure, performance depends on supervision. When activation is autonomous, persistence and performance quality increase. Real motivation survives when control disappears. If the behavior stops as soon as pressure stops, it was never motivation. This is where the leadership role changes. If you cannot inject motivation into people, leadership is not about creating drive. Leadership is about designing the conditions where internal drive can operate. That distinction matters, because if leaders believe they generate motivation, they will rely on pressure, persuasion, and incentive systems. Those tools can produce short-term output, but short-term output under pressure is not the same as sustained performance. The difference becomes visible when pressure increases and uncertainty grows. Only internal alignment maintains action in those conditions. At the executive level, this becomes very clear. A system can look motivated when the costs are low. People comply, they stay polite, they hit the metric, they perform for the meeting. But when friction increases, motivation reveals itself. When priorities conflict, when resources tighten, when timeline breaks, when decisions create losers, that is where you see who has internal drive and who was simply being managed. Consequence is not inconvenience. Consequence means the decision is difficult to reverse, it has cascading impact, and it multiplies across the system. In these conditions, compliance collapses, because controlled behavior is always conditional. People comply while they are being monitored, while they are rewarded, while the situation is safe. But consequence removes that safety. When a decision is visible and personally risky, only internal alignment sustains disciplined action. Research consistently shows the same pattern. Autonomous motivation predicts stronger persistence, higher performance, and greater psychological stability than controlled regulation. External systems can initiate motion, but they cannot guarantee coherence under pressure. And coherence is the executive outcome that actually matters. Coherence means maintaining the same standards when no one is watching. It means maintaining responsibility when the plane fails. It means maintaining decision discipline when trade-offs become painful. That is what leaders should care about. Not activity, not visible enthusiasm, but decision quality and attention. Modern organizations often operate as systems of compliance. Rewards for conformity and penalties for deviation. Recognition tied to short-term metrics. These systems can create output, but they do not create ownership. They do not build tolerance for tension. They do not develop coherent decision makers. Control produces dependent performers. Leadership develops autonomous actors. The difference becomes visible in a simple test. Remove the manager, remove the reward, remove the threat, remove the meeting. What remains? If performance drops when supervision disappears, the motivation was external. It was control. If performance remains stable without pressure, internal drive exists. Leadership is tested in the absence of enforcement. Most leaders ask the wrong question. They ask, how do I motivate my team? The better question is different. What is already driving them? And am I amplifying it or suppressing it? Every individual already carries internal motives. The desire to influence, the desire to build competence, the need for belonging, the need for stability, the need for autonomy, the desire to create impact. The leader's job is not to insert drive. It is to remove the friction, to reduce unnecessary threat, to align work with internal drivers, to create clarity when the system becomes complex. When alignment increases, motivation expresses itself. When misalignment increases, motivation withdraws. The drive was always there. The environment either activates it or constrains it. If you cannot inject motivation, what can you do? You can observe it. The fastest way is not a survey, not a workshop, not a values exercise. It is behavior under low pressure. Remove immediate rewards and threats, and then watch where people naturally move. Patterns appear. Some people protect quality. Some generate alternatives. Some organize execution. Some stabilize group dynamics. Voluntary behavior reveals internal drivers. And then ask a simple question. What makes this important to you? Leadership begins with seeing. Once the motive becomes visible, leaders redesign the conditions. The quality-driven person receives authority over standards. The improvement-driven person receives space to challenge methods. The execution-driven person receives control over sequencing. The cohesion builder receives responsibility for coordination. Not because it is nice, but because it produces disciplined performance without constant enforcement. Do not measure motivation by enthusiasm. Measure it by behavior. Look for consistency when supervision is low. Look for decision coherence and ambiguity. Look for initiative that appears without permission. Look for accountability when mistakes are costly. Motivation reveals itself in responsibility, not in visible excitement. Stop asking, how do I motivate my team? Start asking, am I designing conditions that allow internal drive to operate? Leaders do not create motivation. They design environments where motivation either activates or disappears. That is the rupture. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. If this way of thinking is useful, the deeper analysis lives in the newsletter. That's where I examine leadership capacity at structural level. If you want the next breakdown, subscribe to the channel. And if this changes how you see motivation and leadership, share it with someone who leads. Rewire how you lead.